Good morning, Mike.
How's it going, Gary?
Going very, very well. We're going to do a couple segments with Mike today, folks. So if you'd like to get in and ask Mike a question or you have a comment, you can do so by calling the Bud Light Hotline. We'll take some phone calls if you want to do so, 205-342-9904. Several topics I want to discuss with you, Mike. Let's begin with Alabama football. Back to work this afternoon, the first Sugar Bowl practice. You've been through this before. In 2009, you came off the SEC championship, went over Florida, but then you go on break, and you wait a couple weeks before you get back out on the practice field as you were preparing, of course, to play Texas in the Rose Bowl. But what's it like when you've been concentrating on finals and finishing up the academic semester, trying to lift weights, trying to stay in shape, but then you actually get back out on the practice field for the first time in a few weeks? What's that first practice like?
It's actually, in my opinion, and the way we used to approach it, it's very energetic. It's kind of hard to explain. You know, you have these guys that have been honestly grinding, and I mean, have been just grinding their legs for the last few months. You know, going into training camp, and the most days you get off in a row really is one, maybe two if you're lucky, and Coach Saban tries to do that a couple of times throughout the year. But you get a chance to catch your breath, Gary. I mean, you get a chance to have a seat and focus on academics for a little bit and not grind your legs in the ground. And you do your best to stay in shape, and Coach Cochran obviously does a great job with that. He's been around the block a few times with teams like this to know what's best for them and what's expected. But it's always energetic because you come back and you've been grinding those legs and you have a little bit of time off on your legs, and you come back and you want to bounce around. It's not like you're lugging sandbags behind you. You actually have your legs back up under you, and usually those first couple of practices reflect that when it comes to bowl time.
Mike Johnson, former Alabama All-American, national champion, Atlanta Falcons offensive lineman, with us on the Gary Harris Show. If you'd like to get in on the conversation, we welcome you to do so. Call the Bud Light Hotline at 205-342-9904. That's 205-342-9904. All right, a lot of conjectures flying around here in Tuscaloosa about this Alabama team maybe not being as strong as some other Alabama teams that have gone into the BCS or the College Football Playoff. Although I remind people, this is the fourth straight year to be in the College Football Playoff, but the previous three, Alabama only won it all once, and that was 2 years ago. So, when you get to this level, a lot of times anybody can beat anybody. Having said that, a lot of folks are saying, well, Alabama's going to have to tweak some things. They're going to have to make some changes. They can't play like they did against Auburn or LSU or Mississippi State and expect to beat Clemson. How much are you capable of even changing? And do you think that's something they will look at to tweak some things, put in some wrinkles, have some curveballs for Clemson? Or is that more just fan-based? You kind of get to this point, you do what you do? Or do you think there could be some new wrinkles put in specifically for this game?
I think you have to walk a fine line. I think you have to understand that, doing the things that have gotten you there is most important in situations like this. But, when I say tweaks, I would love to see some of that. And I think that our football team is, mentally capable of getting things like that done in a short amount of time. And I think that Coach Saban's the right coach in certain instances like that. He knows, what his faults are for his football team. He knows where the weaknesses lie within this team, offensively and defensively. And so, making lineup changes, making tweaks to the playbook, talking about putting in different players in different situations. I think it can be done. I think it should be done. I think when you lose a game like you did to Auburn, and listen, let's not get it backwards. This football team is very well prepared to not beat themselves. But in terms of going out and actually beating the other team that is not going to beat themselves either, is going to be a totally different task altogether. And that's what you're going to get in a Clemson football team or a Georgia football team or an Oklahoma team. They're not going to beat themselves either. So you go out there and you have to actually win these games rather than just staying off the board of the turnovers and just grinding the clock out. So Nick Saban, I have no doubt in my mind that he understands what the weaknesses of his team, like I said, and will make the necessary changes to do whatever he has to do to get this team in a spot where their best chance is to win the national title.
I like what you said there at the end, because I agree with that 100%, and I think that's the bottom line. You play all year to get in this position. Alabama was able to do it again, but now it's a one-game season. You lose and you go home. I'm with you. I think everything's on the table. Don't you, Mike? I mean, yes, you played 12 games. Yes, in the spring there may be battles for positions, but right now you don't worry about hurting anybody's feelings. You don't worry about if you see a weakness and you see something you correct, you're all in, right? Everything that you're doing is to try to win this game, right?
Absolutely. And listen, I had this same talk with my coach, Brandon Adams, talking about Georgia, the difference between Georgia and the first Auburn game and the second Auburn game. And the difference to me was Georgia knew what their weaknesses were from the first game. They can approach the game differently. And college football coaches are hard-headed. They go into the matchups. Anytime you're undefeated, you say, man, we have to do the same things that have got us here. We have to go in and run the ball. We have to do this. We have to do that. Well, all of a sudden, when you lose, it opens up that door. All of a sudden, you lose and you say, oh, well, you know what? This didn't work in the long run, or this didn't work in the long run. And so I think that Alabama and Georgia both dealt with that going into Jordan-Hare Stadium, saying, you know what? We're both undefeated. We've both been doing some similar things. Let's go in and keep doing what we're doing. All of a sudden, you lose to Auburn and Jordan-Hare Stadium, and that opens the door, and it allows you to make some tweaks, saying, okay, maybe we were a little bit hard-headed. Maybe we do have to finesse in certain situations. And I think that's where Alabama's at. I think that's where Georgia found themselves at going into Atlanta. And I think this is where Alabama finds themselves at going into New Orleans. That, hey, you can't continue to do some of the same things you've struggled with and be successful. Maybe it'd be time for a change in certain instances.
Mike Johnson knows his stuff, folks. If you'd like to ask Mike a question, again, I know we don't normally open up the phone lines when we have guests on, but we're going to do 2 segments with Mike. If you want to ask him a question or get him to comment on something you're thinking about, you can call the Bud Light Hotline at 205-342-9904. All right, let's go ahead and get to it. The elephant in the room is the quarterback situation. And again, Mike, I think you know where I stand. Everybody that follows Alabama that's a fan wants Alabama to win the game. That's the bottom line. I get that. But quarterback's a very polarizing position. I think you see it through your tinted glasses. I'm a Jalen fan. I'm a Jalen supporter. I look at Jalen, and I see a guy, Mike, that's lost 2 games in his college career. One against Clemson in the national championship game, which was a phenomenal football team, and one at Auburn when Auburn was playing as well as anybody in the country. I don't care who plays quarterback. Alabama might have lost those 2 games. I see a winner. I see a guy that is capable of making plays. I see a guy who lays it on the line every time he goes out there. He's tough. He's dynamic. He takes hits. He doesn't complain. But a lot of people look at it and they see a guy who can't read defenses, can't read coverages, can't stand in the pocket, can't get the ball out of his hand, can't make clutch throws. So there is a lot of speculation, again, as there's been all season, but all season Jalen has been the starter, Mike, as we've talked about. Tua's played well when he's come in, but he's come in either when the game was out of hand or late in the game to wrap it up. He hasn't come in when it was 0-0 or 6-3 or 10-7. Now there are a lot of people saying, well, Tua's going to play in this game. Alabama needs a package for Tua. Where do you stand on that? I mean, they're 2 great players, but Jalen's been your guy. We're talking about everything's on the table. Do you think Alabama offensive coaches, Dable and the offensive staff along with Saban, might look at putting Tua in the biggest game of the season when everything's on the line?
Yeah, I don't know that I don't stand as firmly behind Jalen as you probably do, but I also don't venture, near as far as some of the Tua drumbeaters that I've come in contact with. And I think the answer lies somewhere in the middle, in my honest opinion. I think it's tough. I think you've seen some of the weaknesses from Jalen, and I understand he's a winner. That to me cannot be too far blown out of proportion. I mean, he is a winner. He's a guy that has won a lot of football games. But, I mean, we talk about a guy in Blake Sims who couldn't get us the national title game. He only lost 1 game in his career as a starter. And that's been the nature of the beast, really. I mean, Jacob Coker, national championship quarterback, he didn't lose any games as a starter.
Yeah, nobody loses much around here. You're right about that. That's good.
Yeah, so I think the answer lies somewhere in the middle. Here's what I can rest assured, and what I've been telling Alabama fans that I've talked to is that if you don't see Tua in this game, it's because he wasn't ready to play. Nick Saban's not going to put a guy out there that's not ready. He's not going to read into what's going on with fans and what fans think. He sees the practice. He knows who's ready. If you do see Tua in there, it's not an overreaction on Nick Saban's part. I think that he's seen enough snaps from both these guys to know who's good in different situations. I for one, I don't believe in putting Tua in. I think it a little bit does a disservice to him. I wouldn't be shocked to see a package for him, but my answer to all of this is I want to see some of this taken off Jalen's shoulders. I want to see the designed running back carries. We talk about Jalen's legs and what he does, 17, 18 carries in the Iron Bowl. I understand that a lot of this comes from these read options and Jalen deciding to keep the ball around the corner and keeping these defenses honest. I want to see the designed running back carries. I want to see, the running backs get 15. Damian Harris get 15. Bo Scarborough get 15. Josh Jacobs get 10. I want to see those carries and not putting all the load on every play with his legs and his arms on Jalen Hurts. I think if we do that, then all of a sudden we don't find ourselves in these third and long situations where Jalen's having to read 3 and 4 different coverages on defense. So I think if you get in a spot later in the game where Jalen has been, 2 of 10 on third down, then maybe you do look at making a change at some point. But I don't foresee that happening, and I think the way to avoid that is to make sure these running backs get their rightful carries and their offensive line is able to do work in front of them.
Let me make sure I'm on the same page with you, because I think you're on a good roll today, and you're an offensive lineman. And I listen to you, and I'm sensing you're saying kind of what a lot of people were thinking in that Auburn game. Alabama used to dictate to the defense. It didn't matter how good they were up front. And we're going to play a front in Clemson. Alabama's going to play a front that people say is the best college defensive front in the country. Against Auburn, you're right. I mean, they went away from the running backs. It was almost like, well, we got so much respect for this front. We don't know that we can do what we normally do. I'm sensing you're saying even against Clemson, you line up, you got highly rated, big, strong offensive linemen, and you just knock them in the mouth, and you establish that running game with the running backs. Am I reading you correctly?
You are reading me loud and clear, and it's not so much the play calling, in my opinion. I think that what they've been doing in the last couple of games, when you watch, is saying, okay, we're going to run read option. We're going to read the defensive end on this side. If he crashes, Jalen keeps the ball. If he doesn't crash, then you can hand the ball to running back, and he can follow these double teams. And time again, against Auburn and some of these other teams, what I've seen is there's good double teams up front. There's good B blocks and A blocks, and there's good push at the line of scrimmage, but the end is crashing on the running back. And so Jalen keeps the ball, and he goes around the corner, and he's going to get a couple of yards here and there. Sometimes he's going to be tackled for loss as well. And so, Gary, you watched back in my day at Alabama, you hand the ball to the running back, and he leans into these double teams and lands on the backs of his offensive linemen, and they all fall forward, and they get 5 yards. And then you line up and do it again, and then you line up and do it again. And sometimes I think I don't know if it's the play calling or Jalen keeping the ball too much or what we have to do to establish the running backs getting these carries. But you impose your will on these defenses. You don't worry about one-on-one tackles in the hole on your quarterback and then having to convert these long third downs. And I think that's where we've gotten off schedule. And I would love to see some of the pistol offense or whatever you have to do with Jalen under center, to where sometimes you just hand the ball off the running back, and if it's good, it's good, and if it's bad, it's bad. But you lean on this offensive line, and you've allowed these big guys up front to go to work for you.
I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. And I know Clemson's good up front, but Alabama's good up front. And you can have too much respect for a defense. And I'm with you. I think you line up, you impose your will, you run the ball on first down, get some positive numbers, and you get into some second and medium, second and shorts, and stay out of these third and longs. Mike, in the next segment, I want to get into some other subjects, but before we close out on Alabama, you look at Clemson. I don't think they're as good as they were last year. I think it's a testament to the program that Dabo's built. I didn't think they would be in this position after they lost some of those skill people and they lost Deshaun Watson, but they are. So that's a heck of a program. But this Clemson team, in your opinion, we talk about Alabama on offense and some weaknesses. I've watched Clemson enough to see that I think they've got some weaknesses. I think Kelly Bryant's done a nice job. Don't get me wrong, but he's not Deshaun Watson throwing the football. Wayne Gallman's gone. I think this Clemson offense, and I know they got Hunter Renfrow, who's the Bama killer, but I don't think they're nearly as good as they were last year. Would you agree with that?
I think it's a fair assessment, and it's tough when you see the numbers that Deshaun Watson's put up through the air to really picture Kelly Bryant doing some of the same things against an Alabama defense. And I actually think these teams, in a weird way, I think these teams mirror each other in a lot of ways. I think that Kelly Bryant's a good quarterback. I think he's done a lot of good things. I think the same thing about Jalen Hurts. Do they both have holes in their game? Absolutely. I mean, are there holes on both of these football teams? Absolutely. You've seen, both these teams go home with losses this year in situations that they could have been good in. And I think that it falls on this Alabama defense to try to confuse Kelly Bryant a little bit. He's dangerous and lethal with his legs, more so than Deshaun Watson was. But I think you can get in his head mentally and confuse him with some of the coverages. And I think that the way our front seven has been playing recently and getting some of these guys healthy, listen, go out there and see if you can disguise some of these blitzes, see if you can confuse him to get him to hold the ball for one extra second, and maybe that leads to a couple more tackles for loss and sacks. I don't know that he's got the magic in his legs that Deshaun Watson did. Now, he's a speedy player, and he's a good runner, but Deshaun Watson's ability to move around the pocket in the backfield and buy time and then find receivers downfield, I think, is what was so deadly I got to be honest with you. I'm hard pressed to think that Kelly Bryant has that same design. I think more of a part of his nature is to take off, and so it's going to be tough to defend either way. But I don't see. I'm with you. I don't see it as being as explosive as Clemson was last year in the same way.
I want to talk recruiting with you for a moment, Mike. And first, I want to start with Nick Saban. He did it at LSU, but it was only 5 years, and I think then he left for the Dolphins. He'd put this in place, but it kind of flew under the radar. But when he got to Alabama and immediately started blowing people's socks off in recruiting, he changed the whole landscape in terms of, we had not heard terms like critical factors and applying the same type of standards to college recruiting that NFL coaches apply to the draft. If you're recruiting for this position, the guy's got to be this tall, weigh this much, be this fast. If he doesn't have all the critical factors, then we better see something that just blows us away before we offer the guy a scholarship. He recruited nationally, went after the highest rated recruits, and just didn't, just relentless. We see everybody doing that now, and we see so many schools influenced by Nick Saban with either head coaches that coached for him or assistants on the staff. I would argue that it's going to get tougher for Alabama to bring in all these 5-stars because other schools want their spot at the table, and they're using the same formula to recruit that Alabama is. We're seeing it with Kirby Smart at Georgia. We're going to see it, obviously, with Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee, Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. I'm on to something with this. It's going to get tougher for Alabama to keep grilling in these top 1 or 2 recruiting classes.
I think that it's, at a certain point it was going to get tougher regardless. I think that it's hard to keep streaks like we've had alive, being the number 1 team in the country recruiting year in and year out. And it feels like it's a snowball rolling downhill sometimes, but it really isn't. You have to approach each year, with a newfound attitude when it comes to recruiting. And Nick Saban's been able to do that. And I just think at some point, and I still think we're going to have a good class this year. I think, it'll be top 5, top 3 classes when it's all said and done. But when you look at the number of recruits we're going to be able to sign this year, when you look at the fact that we've lost Jeremy Pruitt and Kirby Smart and a lot of the other guys that have been locked in recruiting recently, that at some point our recruiting was bound to flutter a little bit. And I'm with you. I think that, here's the way I kind of look at it. Kirby Smart has locked up Georgia. I mean, nobody's going into Georgia right now and getting a ton of prospects. You're going to get 1 or 2, but he's done a great job over there of really putting a wall around that state, the same way Nick Saban did at LSU with Louisiana. And Nick's been able to go into Georgia and get, a 5 or 4 star, go into Louisiana and get a 5 or 4 star, or Tennessee or South Florida. It's becoming tougher and tougher. When you look at the quality of head coaches at these Florida programs right now, is big time. Great recruiters down there. Obviously, Kirby Smart really locking down Georgia. Jeremy Pruitt is going to do everything in his power to lock up not only Tennessee, but to venture into South Alabama. I mean, we've seen offers from programs like UMS Wright and St. Paul's and other, programs down in South Alabama where Jeremy's offering freshmen down there. He's getting ready to try to poach some of the guys from Alabama. So the quality of the recruiters at these other schools really has gone up. And work hours is not a problem for these guys. They work their tails off, and I think that they get the quality recruits because of that. I'm not ready to bury Nick Saban and say that, he won't be, have the number 1 class next year. But I think it is getting increasingly difficult year in and year out to keep up with some of these other coaches that are landing at these universities. Recruiting has become a huge priority when you look at the coaches that have been hired.
All right, Mike, this early signing date, I'm not a fan of it. I think it's going to cause confusion and problems with all the coaching changes. You commented today on Michael Penix, the Tampa Bay prep quarterback, had been committed to Tennessee for a long time, has stuck with them through the coaching change, and now Tennessee has dropped him. I think that, programs have to do what they have to do, but it does seem unfortunate. We're seeing this a lot. Now this young man's got to find himself another school when he's done nothing wrong, been a long-time Tennessee commitment, and I think the rules add to this type of thing happening. What can we do about it?
It's tough. I've listened to a couple of people this week comment on all these situations. And Rick Neuheisel's had comments about the early signing day, and, he wishes it was in August. And you have guys that, just wanted to go back to February. And, you have these coaches that are coming in and kind of cleaning house. And honestly, I think Tennessee's had 4 or 5 decommitments since Jeremy Pruitt's been hired. And I think probably 4 of them have been because Jeremy just said, hey, you know what, we don't have a place for you. And that's tough. I think it's tough from all angles. It's definitely tough for the kids. It's tough for the outlook on Tennessee, and Jeremy Pruitt doesn't look good in it. But you have to kind of separate these things. And it's tough for me because I love Jeremy Pruitt, but I've also been through the recruiting, the thing that is recruiting, and I would be devastated if I had lost my offer to a place like Alabama because I didn't have a ton of offers. And, it doesn't look good for anybody. But Jeremy Pruitt was brought there to win. He was brought there to bring in quality players. I respect the fact that he was at least honest with Penix and said, you know what, we don't have a place for you in this program. You probably got to look elsewhere. I think that Michael Penix is going to be okay. From the looks of it, he's got offers to a few other programs now, and he can look in different directions. I don't know. I just don't know what the right way to go about it is. I think that these guys want to land in places. Listen, the last thing Michael Penix wants to do is go up to Tennessee, and they're running an offensive system that he doesn't fit in, and then all of a sudden he's got to find somewhere else to transfer to. And so I don't know if there's a right answer. I think the hard 25 cap that they put on these signing classes has been detrimental, in my opinion. You've seen it to where, Nick Saban has to leave a guy on signing day last year in tears because, we just don't have a place for you. We'd love to take you, but we're not going to lie to you and beat around the bush that you're going to have the gray shirt or blue shirt when you get here. And I just think it's up to the NCAA to try to find a better way to go about this, a better system to try to grease things up on both sides. I just think it's a bad outlook.
A couple other topics that we ran out of time on. Just real quick thought. Matt Corral flips from Florida to Ole Miss in 15 seconds. Does that have to do more with, you think, Florida going in a different direction quarterback-wise, or him just not feeling like a good fit with Dan Mullen?
I just think Dan Mullen showed up to the scene too late. His first priority was to go see Justin Fields, the Georgia quarterback commit, and you know what? Now all of a sudden he whiffs on Matt Corral, and Dan Mullen is a guy that needs a new quarterback in Florida. I don't think Felipe Franks is going to be the guy to run Dan Mullen's system. And
I wanted to play the clip with Adrian Killen saying the SEC has no speed, but we're out of time. But hey,
I think you know my thoughts on that.
Yeah, UCF's got to do a better job with handling their players because that's not what you want to do to tick off Auburn. Hey, thanks, Mike. Tell folks real quickly how they can follow you.
I'm on Twitter at MPJohnson79, and like you said at the top of the hour, you can always find me on SC Country Live weekdays at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. Love the conversation.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes, sir.